Welcome into a Thursday edition of Daily Faceoff Live, streaming live on the DFO YouTube, and as always, a presentation of Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Tyler Yaremchuk, Carter Hutton with you. Huts, are you a Spotify Wrapped guy? Did you get your little recap for the year?
Oh, I haven't got it yet, but I am a Spotify guy. Honestly, I wouldn't want to share it though, man. I got kids, pal. Things go south quickly. It'll be like the funniest music ever that's in there in my rap. And then there'll be like a normal artist that I actually like and a bunch of kid stuff. So don't judge me when I post it.
I can't wait to see it because that's exactly what I wanted to ask you. I'm like, when Huts is rolling around in his minivan, like what's playing on the speakers? Because it's the kids are the DJs at that point.
They are. The kids are the driver. The kids are everything. And I think right now, probably it'd have to be Benson Boone. That's like their big one. Actually, some of the tunes aren't too bad. So we've upgraded from like kids music into that, and then 6-7. That's the one that I'm getting all the time now. And I'm not cool enough to keep up with this.
Pat just put in the YouTube, Carter Spotify Wrapped is tomorrow's garbage day. Yeah, maybe we'll do a side-by-side comp for you and I. But anyways, enough of that. David Pagnotta is our big guest today. He'll join us to talk a little bit about some trade rumors popping up around the NHL. It's our weekly Insider Notebook with Mr. Pagnotta. But let's kick things off, Huts, by talking about one of the more interesting results from last night. It was a game between the Montreal Canadiens and the Winnipeg Jets where both sides were coming in a little bit spicy. Scott Arniel, the Winnipeg Jets head coach, he called their recent efforts embarrassing. Cole Caulfield of the Montreal Canadiens, he called out the Habs effort following the loss that they were coming off. It was two teams looking for a bounce back, and it resulted in a really entertaining game. I actually couldn't take my eyes off this one as I was flipping through a couple of different things last night, but it was a great game. The overtime was absolutely chaotic. It results in a Montreal Canadiens shootout win. So while the Jets get a point, their slide continues. And this wasn't one of those games, Huts, where, it was, oh man, do they ever miss Connor Hellebuyck? Eric Comrie was exceptional. They just couldn't find the back of the net more than twice. This Jets slide, how concerned are you from a Winnipeg perspective here?
Concerned, in a central division where it's very hard to catch up. And I'm with you. I was able to watch the whole overtime and the whole shootout. I kind of came into it late, so I caught the recap of the game earlier. But it felt like this was a very highly contested checking game. And then when it got to overtime, it was all systems go. It was so exciting to watch back and forth. And again, talking about overtime and talking about forcing plays, it was unbelievable. I thought there was a play by Demidov there where he tried to overpass it in overtime. And then it felt like everything broke loose. Like Hudson was holding a stick. And then Jonathan Toews came on the ice, something that was, I thought was very sneaky and veteran of him. He was pulling every gets. He knew that it was anything went. And I thought that was a really big save by Jakub Dobeš in overtime on the pass across from Toews. Made a big save. Then it gets to a shootout skills comp. And, Cole Caulfield just makes it look really easy. He's kind of adjusted in that wide turn like Suzuki does. And then for Jakub Dobeš, 3 big saves. And one thing that's like subtle that I notice when you talk about a younger goalie in those situations, and I reflect on myself, and I know we had Linus Ullmark on talking about that. You can see how he consistently resets himself after each save and just the jubilation of the big win. So that's a huge win for Montreal. And with Winnipeg's goaltending, I'm so concerned. This is, without Connor Hellebuyck, the slide continues. I don't want to put Thomas Milic in this because this is a tough spot for him to be in. Eric Comrie is a guy that has to find a way to win hockey games right now. And I know he was good last night, but he didn't get the win. Getting wins is all that matters right now for the Winnipeg Jets, and they are not finding a way to do that.
And listen, I've never been in a professional locker room, so maybe you can speak more to this. But the Jets pulled on the alarm bell, did the whole players only meeting thing the other day after their loss. And I feel like that players only meeting, if guys are truly behind the scenes, airing their grievances to an extent with one another, and maybe not calling each other out, but having like some good, hard, honest discussion. If you come out and win, it has a chance to really be a rallying point, right? Everyone's in a good mood. Maybe you forget about something that one of your teammates said about you, whatever it is, right? Like it brings everybody up and almost brings everyone together. If you go to the players only meeting and you follow it up with a handful of losses, I feel like it has the ability to just be the other effect where like it can nosedive you. Guys' frustrations almost grow more. So that's why, even though they got a point, it's a loss. And I was listening to Mark Scheifele after the game, and like he was dejected after this one. I'm worried that now this Jets direction is heading the opposite way than they were hoping after that players only meeting.
Well, that's the other thing too. Like, what happens in a locker room and, obviously the experience and something that I dealt with on winning teams and losing teams is like a coach will come in and say something, a message, right? And on a losing team in a group without strong culture, strong leadership, is like little pity parties start. What I mean by that is one guy's pissed off about his ice time or his situation. So then he grabs another guy beside him and he's like, hey, like, this is bullshit. Like, we shouldn't be doing this, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden it just starts to deteriorate everything you have. Where in a strong locker room, there's really no other way than to get in line. And if you aren't, it's the guys that can sacrifice and play in any role. And we talked about that yesterday with Jeff Merrick about putting guys in situations, hey, I'll do anything I need to do to help this team win. And good hockey teams find a way to do that. And if you don't get the response after the coach has been trying to beat it into, you've had closed door meetings, this is when guys really, really start to, turn on each other, and the culture and winning attitude really sinks out of the room.
And this is what we talked about when, it's not a season-ending injury for Connor Hellebuyck by any means. And an update from Jets head coach Scott Arniel, Hellebuyck is apparently close to getting back on the ice. So he's not ready to start practicing yet. He's not even ready to start ramping up to practicing yet, but it's getting close. Arniel joked he's going to make sure he has 4 yellow non-contact jerseys on. But the danger with this Hellebuyck injury was that things could fall apart and you could be sitting here. Let's say he's back by January 1 and it's like a pretty quick timeline for all of this. You could be 8 points out of a playoff spot with 6 teams you need to jump. So they got to get this thing sorted out quickly here in Winnipeg. They play a very, very heavy schedule in the month of December, as every team does with the Olympic break looming. And if you're not 500 in this stretch, then it's going to start getting late real early in Winnipeg. And speaking of that Olympic break, Huts, oh, man. I mean, if Jets fans are feeling uneasy about their team right now, put me in the corner of feeling uneasy about the 2026 Winter Olympics and NHL player participation. There's a few things that have popped up over the last few days. The rink that they're going to play these games on, it was originally supposed to be built to NHL specifications, right? So they weren't doing the Olympic-sized ice this year in Milan. Well, turns out the rink's going to be 3 or 4 feet shorter, and this isn't a surprise to the NHL. I know the story has got some legs over the last couple of days, but this is something that actually broke all the way back in September. So the league, managers, all that stuff, they've known about this for a handful of months. It's just coming to a bit more light right now. And Chris Johnson threw some context to it here. He says the IIHF approved dimensions that are 3 feet plus shorter and a hair wider than NHL buildings. So again, like, they've known this, they've approved this. But where I start to get concerned, our colleague Matt Larkin, who's come on the show in the past, he put out a tweet the other day and he asked Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly, what is the % chance that NHLers do not end up participating in these Olympics? And Bill Daly had a really, really interesting response to this. He didn't throw cold water on it. He didn't say we're going no matter what or we're confident in a plan. He responded to Matt Larkin and said, depends on the percentage you want to place on the possibility that the rink doesn't get completed. If there's no rink completed, there are no NHLers going to the Olympics. That doesn't sound great considering we are 2 months away from the games, Carter.
Yeah. And again, the size of the rink is very important when it comes to playing hockey at this level, and something even from a goalie standpoint, from where that feet that they lose building that rink goes into play. It changes the whole game. It changes the depth you have. And what happens is there's a time for adjustment, and it almost makes it unsafe for players at times because they're so used to playing a certain way. And this is something I remember dealing with a lot, where I'd play all year in the NHL and then I'd come home in the summer and I just play on local rinks when I was training. Your sight lines are different, your depth perception, everything goes into the rink that you're in, on top of a rink that, we have cranes around that is trying to get built. The safety when 20,000 plus, or how many people, I don't know exactly how many people it holds, but that being said, that's worrisome when it hasn't been used, it hasn't been functional, and teams now are sending their assets over that are, $100 million players to go play in a rink that isn't set up. I just don't understand how you can't have this with the engineering today and technology. There's a bunch of Italians here at Thunder Bay make good super soda that can build a rink no problem, and lay the concrete. I just find that insane to me that this is the point that we're at when we're talking about a $1 billion industry in the NHL.
They've known the Olympics are coming for 10 years. How do you not have the rink done 2 months out? The rink should have been done 2 years out for this whole thing. And I know there's a lot that goes into it. The Olympics are massive, and the men's hockey tournament, it's a big part of it, but it's also just one part of this whole thing. But that's almost what makes me nervous, is that the men's tournament is just one part of it. Is the IOC going to be pulling out every stop that they need to make sure this happens? Or do they have 1,000 other fires that they're trying to put out to get these games, to get these games put on without a bunch of hiccups? Like, I'm nervous about it. And I have seen a little bit of a conversation popping up of like, well, why can't you just pull shoot right now and do another Four Nations? Fire it up in Toronto. Instead of sending all your players to Italy, just send them to Toronto and do a tournament. And Pierre LeBrun from TSN, he was asked about that. Like, does the NHL have a plan B option if they're pulling shoot on Italy? And the answer was no. Pierre LeBrun said there is reportedly no plan B for the NHL. It's either Milan and it's going to Italy, or it's nothing. What, we're going to have a month break in the schedule with the players just all sitting in Cabo? That's insane.
Yeah, it is insane too, like to not have a plan. But then again, it goes to the fact that like it's supposed to be done, and not being able to get this done on the Olympic stage is wild to me. And I know it's not totally on the NHL. This is the IHF and what's gone on, but this feels like the bare minimum should have been figured out. This should have been planned out better, and it's very disappointing. And again, there's so many issues that go into it. And I'm with Bill Daly on this, like, because you have to put the players and their safety and the situation you're putting them in priority number one, right? That has got to be priority number one. And right now from Milan and from the Olympics, what we're seeing, that's not what we're getting. So they would rather err on the side of safety and caution, I believe, to keep their players safe than lose out on the possibility of another Four Nations Cup. And maybe they can swing something and make it happen. But then again, now nobody's included except those 4 teams. I don't know, it's a makeshift all-star game, what happens. But this will be thoroughly disappointing because I feel like the Olympics, the NHL, hockey in general, has been a great place. To miss this opportunity is huge for the NHL.
Yeah. For the growth of the game, all of that. The only reason, and this is maybe just me naturally being a bit more of like a pessimist, but we know the players have been dying to go for the last 2 Olympics that they've missed. We know guys really, really want to go. And it's been the league that's always kind of been like, not so fast. The insurance, all this stuff. There's always been an issue. There's a little pessimistic part of me that's like, is the NHL and Daly and Bettman behind the scenes, are they sitting there just kind of like smirking a little bit, being like, well, guess we're not going to go, right? Like, is this the NHL getting their way? Because I think if the league had it their way, I think every time we do best on best, it would be an NHL sanctioned event where they're making the money. So maybe this is the league being like, look, you can't trust the IOC. Like, we told you guys.
Yeah, I could see that too. And it always comes down to money, right? At the end of the day, money is the number one overall issue. And something I learned playing the game, like at the end of the day, they're going to do whatever they need to do. So you have to represent themselves. So that is concerning, but I just think the optics at this point are so bad on the NHL. Yes, you're going to lose on certain instances where obviously the Four Nations was just more of a big money maker, where the Olympics are going to take what they can and they're risking their players in that sense. But that being said, just the optics to have to pull, maybe this is their scapegoat. It's scary, but man, I think there'd be a whole hockey community that'd be thoroughly disappointed.
Yeah. All right. We are going to get to our insider segment in a little bit here. But first, Huts, I wanted to throw a question your way because I think the Vezina race is shaping up to be really interesting. You know, a month ago, it kind of felt like with Connor Hellebuyck's hot start to the year, it's like, all right, there might be like a little bit of a cheeky Hellebuyck or Thompson debate at the end of the year, but it was Connor Hellebuyck's to lose. And now with the injury to the Jets superstar goalie, this thing is maybe more wide open than we thought. So if you were to give out the Vezina right now, I think there's a handful of players who would be in the conversation. Thompson would be a finalist for it. Vasilevsky's been great. Spencer Knight's been awesome. Wallstedt and Wedgwood maybe just sitting right on the outside. But that's not the question I want to ask you, Carter Hutton. I want you to go fortune teller mode. I want you to tell me at the end of the season, out of all the guys who are in the conversation right now and appear to be in the mix and are off to great starts, who are the 3 goalies that you think have legitimate staying power when it comes to this Vezina conversation?
Oh, it's you know, that honestly picking right now is harder in my personal opinion, just because there's been so many great stories, right? You look at Wedgwood and Knight, and then you start thinking about fortune telling. Okay, so who am I going to tell you is going to be good at the end of the year? Well, it's going to be the best goalies. The cream kind of stays at the top and guys that are going to play more minutes. So take Wedgwood out of the fact because Mackenzie Blackwood is back. His minutes are going to start to drop. They're going to start getting their starter going. I truthfully think right now this year, the way this team is built and the way that the Atlantic is, Andre Vasilevsky is the biggest bang for my buck. I think this team is good. I think they're playing a better brand of hockey and they're going to generate more offense. Then I think it's going to be him and Logan Thompson, right? Because Igor Shesterkin and the New York Rangers are just out of it. So Logan Thompson, Vasilevsky, I think are going to be the 2 dogs that compete for it. And there's a lot of guys that I love, like Swayman's been awesome, Spencer Knight, but Logan Thompson, now that Hellebuyck is out, we look back to last year not being named to the Ford Cup. And now he's answered the call for another season. Those are my 2 dogs in the hunt. Gun to my head, Ty. I got to go with the big cat. Andre Vasilevsky's been off the map a little bit. He's been good, but I think this is his year where he establishes again that he's the best Russian goalie there is.
Andre Vasilevsky last won the Vezina Trophy back in 2017-2018. That'd be pretty neat to have him go 8 years in between Vezina Trophy wins. And listen, the first part of this, it's about a lot of guys who are off to good starts. And you need to, if you're going to win one of these season-long awards, like we always joke, especially with the Hart Trophy, the Jack Adams, like narrative-driven awards, where like there needs to be a conversation happening about you in December and January if you want to have a shot to win it at the end of the year. But let me maybe float you one when we're talking Vezina here about maybe a guy who's not off to a great start that you think could kind of turn on the Jets a little bit here. Like when you work your way lower down the odds board, I was surprised. I mean, I'm going 3, 6, 9. Jake Ottinger is outside of the top 10 right now when it comes to the Vezina conversation. That's a guy who I'm looking at, and it's like, you know what? Maybe the first couple of months haven't been absolutely electric, but I could see him with, again, the Hellebuyck injury and the field opening up a bit. I could see a guy like Ottinger working his way into the conversation by the end of the season.
Yeah, that's a fair take too. And Dallas obviously losing Sagan doesn't help, but this is more of a team that's going to lock it down. They're going to play a tighter brand of hockey, and they will. So there's value there for sure. I also think there's value on like a long shot in Jesper Wallstedt, right? Like what if he does just never slow down, right? There's always that impact where like it's not sustainable, but what if he just continues to play this way? He's been an absolute skyrocketing machine for this team and putting Minnesota in the spot that they're in. So I do like that factor. You know, it's okay to bet on the hot hand because at the end of the day, a few injuries here or there, like this is a conversation if we're having before the Hellebuyck injury. Well, who's not going to, like, he's going to win it. Someone else can finish second. We can almost just debate who's going to be voted in the top 3. Now it's wide open. And I think that stays wide open until someone gets hurt or someone slows down.
Yeah, Bet365. I'd love if you could throw up some odds on just being not winning the Vezina, but Vezina finalist, because I would love to throw a little money on a guy like Ottinger working his way into the top 3. All right, let's get to our big segment for the day. It's our weekly Insider Notebook, and it's brought to you by Uber Eats. Uber Eats is enabling fans to maximize their fandom all season long with exclusive game day deals on the app. From game day eats to paper plates if you're hosting, to all the ingredients you need to make your go-to game day dip. Before, during, and after the game, Uber Eats is assisting every fan's hockey experience all season long. Always a pleasure to be joined by David Pagnotta from the Fourth Period. He's also one half of the DFO Rundown Insider Edition with Irf Gaffar every Wednesday here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. Dave, let's start with what you and Irf started with on the most recent episode of the pod. Kiefer Sherwood. What's the update there? Is there any urgency in Vancouver to move on from this guy? Are you surprised we're still talking about this on December 4th?
A little bit, Ty, not to lie. I figured that once this really got out, it seemed like they wanted to make sure that they were going to make at least one big move relatively quickly in all of this. Now, it was also, you know, the message was put out there to start getting the ball rolling as opposed to waiting until, you know, January and then potentially making moves. But with so many teams interested, Vancouver is just kind of sitting there going, all right, well, who's going to give us the best return now? He's second in the league in hits. We know what he can do goal production-wise, although that's dipped a little bit, but I don't think anybody anticipated him continuing that actual pace throughout this season. And he's got that $1.5 million cap hit that I'm going to continue to harp on because it's so attractive to so many teams. So when you put all three of those things together, the secondary scoring ability, the physicality, the dollars, Vancouver is hoping to maximize a return on this. And, you know, yes, they're looking at young athletes. They want to bring in some young players, NHL-ready guys. But at the same time, if a team is willing to give a first-round pick as part of this, and again, it's going to be late in that first round, most likely by whichever team tries to acquire him, and maybe sprinkle a little extra on top of that, I think that's what the Canucks are hoping for, either that or equivalent value.
Yeah, and you know, there's a lot of pieces that can move and what's going on. Again, it's still that feeling out process with teams, right? Like who's the first guy to go?
Yep.
Trying to get as much value as you can. And the team I want to jump to is the Buffalo Sabres. When I talk about UPL, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, right? He's obviously been at the forefront of trade talks and where he's at. He's 3-1 in his last 4, right? He's above league average save percentage, which is crazy to say at .899. What happens in Buffalo? Like, is he a guy that gets moved out? I know there was that video that's circulating around him at a bar. Like, poor guy can't even go for a beer anymore.
I know, right? It's after a loss. Sometimes you need a 1 or 2 or 7 after one of those. Look, Buffalo has, at least they feel they have, a pretty good bag of riches in net. And with Devin Levi coming up and with how Ellis and some of the other guys have performed this season, UPL, it looks like might be a little bit more expendable. Now, you try to examine this a little bit more and you go, well, he's got a no-trade clause that kicks in next season, July. Is there a possibility of something happening now? I think Buffalo's willing to listen. He's got a $4.75 million cap hit. I think the Sabres will listen. If they do make a move, I believe it would be to address other areas of the team, not necessarily getting a goalie back. I don't think they need that. They'd be looking at either somebody up front or on the back end, probably up front. But given the marketplace, it'd be interesting to. I don't anticipate something happening right now. I think this is more something that kind of gets. You're going through the exploratory phase and might be something more geared towards the offseason. But with some other teams that are looking to kind of, potentially entertain the possibility of moving a netminder like St. Louis, maybe that's, an area that they look at. If they move somebody out, don't bring in a goalie back, go in this direction. There are a few different variables in play, but that type of creativity includes a lot of cap juggling and financial juggling, which leads me to believe that might be more summer. But I think if the right deal presented itself, I think Kevin Adams and Jarmo Kekalainen and the guys in Buffalo would consider moving UPL in season.
Yeah, I think anything can go there in Buffalo, right? I've been through it. It's been a long struggle, right? You see it go on.
Yeah.
And I want to switch now to a team out west in the Seattle Kraken, right? This is a team that, was hanging around the playoffs. They've dropped their 4-4-2 in their last 10. They just don't really have that star player when we start talking about a league built on superstars. What's the plan for them moving forward here as we try to catch up, I guess, in the Pacific?
Yeah, well, they're mapping that out now. They're in LA this week, going through their scouting meetings and just trying to map out a plan exactly to what you said, to how this is going to look moving forward. They've got some good pieces, but you're right. They don't have that superstar presence. And obviously that's tough to get. But they're looking to continue, or still looking to see if they can add somebody in their top six. They were in on Jordan Kyrou in the offseason. In and around the draft, like a number of other teams were. That's the caliber of player they'd like to bring in. Somebody in his mid-20s who's controllable. He's got some term on his contract, and they can get creative with potentially bringing him in. Now, that type of move typically is more in summer, but we're seeing, because of the salary cap, a lot of teams being more willing to make those types of moves in season because they've got more cap flexibility now and obviously going to have a lot more moving forward because the cap's going up. They also have some internal business they got to take care of with a bunch of free agents or eligible free agents going into the summer. But Seattle's trying to just figure out what they've got exactly and how they can and how and where they could potentially pounce in order to bring in, one of these younger big fish that might potentially be available. This might be a scenario where we see something out of left field, be it, them, Utah, another team that's also looking to add a big piece up front. Usually that takes a little bit of the exploratory process. You got to go out there and poke and see if there's an avenue to explore a certain player on another team. Hey, is this guy available? Would you listen? As soon as you hear that, maybe like a little bit of hesitancy, you're going to want to try to pounce and convince that team to make that type of move. So I think that's kind of where Seattle is at. And if it doesn't happen now, I think, or now being in season, I think that's something they're going to continue to explore. But that's a priority for them, is to bring in somebody that fits their top six, preferably on the first line, that can add some extra punch to that lineup.
I want to throw you a couple of questions from our YouTube chat here because they've been tossing them over.
Yeah.
Lori is in, and she wants to know, do the Red Wings have the prospects and salary cap to make a legit offer for Quinn Hughes?
I think they have the pieces. I know everything's getting hyped up with Detroit and everything. Merrick was the first one to throw that out last week about Detroit being a team that to keep an eye on, and I think that's the case. But with Quinn Hughes, I still maintain that I'd be surprised if anything happens this season. That being said, I think Detroit has the pieces to make something work. It just depends on what if Vancouver's willing to take a significant package that doesn't necessarily lead to a proven young star in the NHL right now, but a guy or a couple pieces that have tasted the NHL that are ready to make that jump. I think that's something that Vancouver would entertain, but you're probably looking at, if you're going in that direction, 3 to 4 significant pieces in a package in order to pry Quinn Hughes out of there. I think that's a possibility in terms of Detroit having the assets, but I still think it's premature in terms of Vancouver's willingness to even entertain that thought with any team.
We had another one too, and I know the Flyers are a team that's popped up a little bit in the Quinn Hughes thing, but Jay is in, and I think he is a Flyers fan, but he wanted to know, have you heard anything about the Canucks having interest in someone like an Owen Tippett? So I guess you can start there, and he goes on to add, like, you know, who could the Flyers net from the Canucks for him? I mean, that's a whole different conversation to play hypothetical games, but Owen Tippett, is that a guy who's legit on the market?
On the market, no. But on the radars of a lot of teams, yes. And still, yes. I bring this back to the start of the season when I first mentioned that he was a guy that a lot of teams are interested in pursuing at some point if the Flyers are in a position to make that move. You know, I talked to some people in management at the time in Philly, and they're like, whoa, we're not shopping him. And that's still the case. But it does seem like there are teams that are looking at the Flyers and going, all right, let's see kind of how they piece together their lineup. And if the ice time isn't fully there for a guy like Owen Tippett, whose no trade kicks in July, maybe that's an avenue to pursue. And I think the Canucks are one of the teams that have some interest in Owen Tippett. I think there are a few others that have also poked around at various points in the offseason and at the start to at least say, hey, if you get there, give us a call. But from Vancouver and Philly's perspective, yeah, there's obviously the Tocchet connection. There's familiarity there with some of his players, or former players, I should say. I don't know if there's a fit there. Even on, like, yes, there would be interest in Quinn Hughes. I think every team would love to take a run at him. But I just, right now, I'm not sure if the right fit is there for what Vancouver would be looking for Hughes and what the Flyers may be willing to part with in any type of deal. But between the two, again, yes, there's going to be a connection because of talk, and there are some players that I'm sure he'd like to bring over. But I don't think there's anything overly imminent, I guess is the best way to put it, between those two clubs.
You can hear more from him and Irf Gafar on the latest episode of the DFO Rundown Insider Edition. It's right here on the DFO YouTube. Dave, appreciate your time, and we'll chat with you again next week.
Can't wait, boys. See ya.
What's interesting, and I know we hit on a couple of askDFO questions there with Dave, but there's been a few things popping up, like, oh, what do the Canucks look for if they decide to go through the route of a Quinn Hughes deal? And there's always the talk when it's a big player like this. It's like, oh, do you go out there? You need some guys like right now, right? The GM's got to be able to go to his fan base and say, yes, we traded Quinn Hughes, but look at these players we got back. And that's always dangerous for me, Huts. Like, I think they kind of ended up trying to go get Louis Eriksson, Riley Smith. Look, we got these guys who are going to step right into the lineup. Okay, well, they're not Tyler Seguin. Like, if you would have just taken a futures approach, maybe you get a young guy. And yes, I know there's risk when you acquire a player who isn't an established NHLer, but there's upside there. Like, if I was the Canucks, I wouldn't be sitting there and looking at the Red Wings active roster. I'd be looking at good young prospects, guys who can maybe outperform what they are right now, and you can get some legitimate value here instead of just sitting there and being like, oh, look, we got 3 NHLers for Quinn Hughes. Whoop-de-doo, who cares? You're not going to be good.
Yeah, I agree. And again, that's why the Tippett one for me is an interesting one. He is a guy that just at times like leaves you wanting more, right? Like I feel like he's on the cusp of being a superstar, or when you work down into different lineups, just a prospect that maybe is just in a position where he doesn't get the right opportunity too. It's all based on organizational depth too, where if you could find someone waiting in the wings that's a better player, he's not going to make it. Get him into your system, get him developing. And one thing I will say, it's really hard to predict this, obviously, but just the general change of scenery for people, for players, can be inspiring and just being in a different market. And I think there's a lot of players right now that you could label in Buffalo, I think, that need to change the scenery. I think Owen Tippett in Philadelphia is one that lights the lamp, because there's clips of Tippett where it's just like his give a shit meter is so low and he's not trying. But then there's times where he can take a game over and maybe he gets in a better culture, more mature, and he becomes an outright superstar.
Yeah. All right, let's get to our daily bets for Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Chalk up 2 wins in a row for me. I'm on a good run. I'm 2-0-1 this week, but Pat Puff is in the positives. Holy shit.
Yeah, it finally happened. I feel pretty good about it. I knew, too, because I had dropped Slafkovsky in my fantasy league, so I knew at some point he was going to start to heat up because that's just my luck. But, yeah, power play goal and a couple shots last night got me in the positives. I thought Carter's was looking good until Anaheim stopped saving pucks.
Yeah. You're the only Puff Daddy doing well right now in the world. So honestly, for me, again, I just go with the parlay. I should have looked a little more into it. Ville Husso didn't last very long. He gave up 4, and then you actually sent that text last night of the backup that went in to try to get me to say his name, but we're just going to call him Butsy for right now. So back to the drawing board tonight, boys.
Yeah, give him a good hockey nickname. Throw the SY on the end, and you don't need to worry about pronunciations. Our picks for tonight, it's been working for me, so I'm going to keep going with overs. Last night, Utah hit the over for me all on their own with a 7 spot. Tonight, I'm looking at that over of 6 between Nashville and Florida. Sergei Bobrovsky has not been having a good season, and Florida, the over has hit in 4 of their last 5. For Nashville, they've had 6 or more goals in 5 of their last 5. The fact that this number is 6 builds in some insurance because I can always get the push if it's a 4-2 or 5-1 game. So give me over 6 goals between Nashville and Florida. Pat.
Yeah, I like that. I'm also feeling really good about this one. I've got Minnesota -1.5 versus Calgary. Minnesota, one of the hottest teams in the league right now. Edmonton held them to 1 goal. I don't imagine Calgary's going to do that tonight. I don't care if it's Gustafsson or Wallstedt in it. I'm pretty sure it's Gustafsson, but I feel pretty good about that. One of the best teams in the league going against one of the worst teams in the league. And as an Oilers fan, I like trying to get that in as much as possible. So at plus 210, Minnesota -1.5 is looking pretty spicy for me tonight. Huts?
I'm taking the backup role tonight. I'm taking the Ottawa Senators, Levi Merilainen. I'm taking the Lightning, Jonas Johansson, and I'm taking the Oilers, Calvin Pickard. These teams got to win at home. They're going to step up. The backups are in. I was a backup. Let's see what we can do, boys.
Yeah, Edmonton going with Pickard after Stuart Skinner gave them back-to-back really good starts. One more thing for Bet365. If you head to the website or open up the app today, you will see an all-new Daily Faceoff live parlay. Edmonton and Toronto to win in regulation is the bet tonight. So check it out on the app. Let's wrap up the show with a little bit of garbage time. And I guess your question is garbage or not on this call on Sabres defenseman Rasmus Dahlin. Huts, we're going to roll the clip here. He was given 5 in a game for this hit on Trevor Zegras. And listen, I am someone who I'm all for cracking down on hits from behind. I think it's a matter of time until someone gets really badly hurt, and the NHL will have to address it the same way it addressed headshots 10 years ago. I don't know if this one's worth 5. I think Zegras goes down a little easily. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a bit of a sell job. These are plays that happen all the time. And again, you start to lose respect for a guy. Like even the other night when he was head faking Connor Clifton, trying to get him into, bait him into something. It's just like a respect factor. And what I hate about situations like this, you lie on the ice, and if you're hurt, right? But he's not. Now his team responds, and now they're outnumbered, and someone on your team is going to eat something because you want to lie down on the ice. So I don't love that. I don't think you disrespect the game. And you can tell Rasmus Dahlin's a pretty true player. I had a chance to play with him for 3 years. He's not too happy about it. And again, once you get that rap, man, you lose a lot of respect.
Yeah, and it's not like Zegras missed any time. He still went on to play 14 minutes in that hockey game. So yeah, I didn't love it. Dahlin didn't love it. There was a shot of Zegras kind of looking too, and it almost felt like he was I don't know. He was fine after. He was standing by the bench almost like smirking. So you're right. I don't love that from Zegras. Didn't like the call on Dahlin either. All right. That is a wrap on today's edition of the show. We'll be back tomorrow with a Friday edition of things. We'll reveal Hutz's Spotify wrap for the year. And we'll see everybody then. Enjoy the hockey tonight. See you tomorrow at noon Eastern. Hey, hockey fans, if you enjoyed that video, then make sure you hit the subscribe button right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We have you covered for everything you need. Exclusive interviews on The Sheet with Jeff Merrick, all the latest hockey news on Daily Faceoff Live, and you can always get your morning started with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohn on Morning Cup of Hockey. Don't miss a minute. Hit that subscribe button.